following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
Welcome to Speak Up. I'm Kevin Avard, your host, and today I have a special guest from Cornerstone. But before we get to our guest, I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about my guest and the reason I asked her to come on my show. You know, we get really busy in our lives. You know, some of us get up at 4:30 in the morning. We'll go to the gym. We'll make sure the kids are ready for school. We go to our jobs. We come back home. The kids either got sports or they've got other activities, or you're tired from a long day. And in the meantime, a lot of things are happening. There's things happening at the Capitol. There's things happening in your school board. There's things happening at City Hall. And it seems as though we don't have time for everything. You know, all these things seem to weigh us down. And so we tend to dismiss these activities. And I saw a post today, or the other day, from Marie and my guest, and it drove home that while we're busy doing our lives, things are happening that affect us. And I want to welcome you to our show. Thank you for coming on the show, Anne-Marie.
Thanks for having me.
Right, and again, that post really drove home that, you know, all these taxes may be possibly being raised, all these things that are going on that really affect every household, every taxpayer, every homeowner, every renter, every person who sends their child to school. They're going to be affected by all these decisions where only a handful of people, if that, showed up for a meeting.
Yep.
Is that?
That's correct. I went through the Bedford proposed school budget because I'm a Bedford resident. And I went to the budget meeting the other night in Bedford, and I think we had about maybe 5 residents come to that meeting. And that's where they presented the budget. They presented what they were proposing to spend in the next fiscal year. And what surprised me was that there were so few people there. And you went through all the reasons why people are busy, and I understand that. And there are ways to, deal with those situations that come up, important situations like a budget, because the largest percentage of your taxes right now are going to the schools. And so with that, you need to know what they're spending money on. And as I go through the budget every year in Bedford, I'm part of the Bedford Taxpayers Association, also in Bedford. It just shocks me the amount of money that is being spent in these schools. Obviously, a lot of it needs to be spent, but when you go through it line by line, things start jumping out at you, and that's what I would encourage people to do. It doesn't take that long, and it's something you can do from your home. You go to the school's website, you click on the budget, and you go through it line by line, and you look at the entries, and you look at the reasons. Bedford does this now. I'm assuming all districts do this, and if they don't, they should. They itemize what that amount that they're budgeting for is related to. For instance, if they're buying new textbooks, they will list that, and the accountant's remarks underneath will explain why they have to buy new textbooks. And then you'll see what they spent last year, and then you'll see what they're proposing for this year. So you can make a good comparison.
When you see it online, you're not seeing their actual decision. It's basically their proposed decision.
Their proposal.
So it's not
right
too
now.
late. Okay.
Right.
Oh my gosh. So
yes.
So you don't necessarily have to be at those meetings.
Well, the budget meeting is a way of here's what we're proposing. And then what's going to follow up is the deliberative session. And I'm sure we'll get more people at that session. And that's where I think that there's going to be more discussion on what they are proposing. And that's where, I think we'll get more people. It seems like in the past, that's when you have people come and they speak and they'll say, this is what I don't like about the budget. You'll have people say, this is what I do like about the budget, and they'll speak before the school board. The problem is I think that, because I deal with a lot of school board members from across the state, is that when people are not giving that feedback, they don't know what you're thinking. And so I have a little bit of sympathy for school board members who are trying to come up with a budget if they're not hearing from members of the public. And members of the public need to be fiscally responsible. I think you could probably go through just about every budget and find some items in there that probably can be removed. I went through the Bedford budget. There's a lot of items in there that I feel, well, first of all, some of them need clarification. I'd like to know exactly, because I don't want to make an assumption. So I'm going to get some answers to some of the proposals.
What are some of the things that stuck out to you?
Well, for instance, they are going to, in Bedford, they have been using everyday math, which has been in a lot of our school districts. And it's absolutely one of the worst math programs out there. I think that you used in Nashua before. I think you've switched it out. And they are going to put a new program in, but it's going to be everyday math, Common Core aligned. Now, so I'm a math tutor, and I've had issues with this math program in Bedford ever since they adopted it several years ago. We're seeing math problems in grade 5 and grade 6 in Bedford right now, and I directly link that to the program. So now we're going to buy another program, or the same program, but it's going to be Common Core aligned, and there's so many controversial issues about Common Core too, that I'm looking at this budget item and I'm thinking, okay, I have a real problem with that. I have a problem that we're going to rebuy the same kind of failed program. And you can look at Bedford's proficiency scores. Well, Bedford's doing really well. But what that doesn't tell you is that a lot of our kids are in private tutoring.
Oh.
And so that's something, we're doing well in our proficiency, but I'm an education liaison for Cornerstone, so I go deeper. I look for more answers than the average person does.
When you're tutoring, do you use the Common Core at all?
I don't tutor now. I have in the past. So right now, if somebody would come to me and ask me for tutoring, I don't do that right now. I just don't have the time to do it. But it will drive a lot of kids to tutoring. Common Core will, and so does everyday math.
Yeah, I'm hearing there's a lot of controversy nationwide about this Common Core.
Yeah.
One of the facts that I found out is that we did a show on this before, but Common Core actually was introduced in New Hampshire not through the legislature.
Right.
There were 4 people that basically voted it in without any oversight, without any discussion, without any school boards, no state legislatures, no state senate, no committee meetings. It was just put in.
Yeah. It happened several years ago. And when that happened, I watched the process unfold. The Board of Education did vote to adopt Common Core standards. There were 4 appointed individuals, 4 appointed school board members, because our board members, now these are state board members, not local board members, are appointed. They are not elected. They're appointed by the governor and approved by the Executive Council. So we had appointed members on the school board that they did conduct some hearings prior to making the decision, but this decision was really quick, and they had a few people testify at the board meetings in favor or against. But what I found was that a lot of the people who testified said, I'm looking at these standards, they look good compared to what New Hampshire was using. They didn't compare them to what was the best in the country, and that's where I think we made a big error.
What is the best in the country?
You can go and look at the old California academic math standards. They were considered some of the best in the country. For instance, they go all the way through high school. They include pre-calculus. They include trigonometry. The Common Core standards end at Algebra 2, and they have a few trigonometry concepts thrown in, which basically one of the biggest arguments against the Common Core math standards is that they don't prepare our students for STEM programs, which is science, technology, engineering, and math.
And our country is falling way back behind. I mean, we're at the 24th.
Right. How do you prepare kids for the jobs that are really the money-making jobs out there right now without a STEM preparation? So that's one of the biggest criticisms. And you have the business industry association in New Hampshire that came out in support of Common Core standards, which shocked me, absolutely shocked me.
BSA.
The BIA.
Right, BIA.
The BIA. And this is an organization that's made up of businesses, and these standards don't even prepare our students for the STEM programs or the STEM careers. I have a real problem with that. I called the BIA, I called their representative, and they never called me back. And so I wanted to make sure, are you aware of the problems with these standards, that they're not going to prepare our kids for the selective colleges? Maybe for community college, this is workforce training. So, I don't want to go too far into Common Core, but those are some of the problems.
And anything else that sticks out that you want to draw attention to?
Sure, I think that any school district should look at whether they're paying dues. The dues are a big item that come up every year. I shouldn't say a big item.
Dues.
Yeah, dues like on behalf of the School Board Association, New Hampshire School Board Association. I'm sure that you're probably paying dues to be part of that. You're probably paying dues to be part of the Superintendent's Association. And oftentimes, what happens is they have a lobbyist go to Concord. And oftentimes, those lobbyists do not represent what the average taxpayer and the parent wants in their district. A lot of parents have no idea that they are paying dues to an organization that lobbies against them.
Interesting.
And that's what's happening in some of our school districts. I think Manchester pulled out of some of these organizations and said, we're not going to pay dues to them anymore. But that's something that I would look at. There's a law that says that, that these organizations cannot use state funds to do their lobbying. So if any of this is coming, like if your school is getting state funding and then they pay dues to this organization and this organization goes out and lobbies, that would be in violation of state law. They're not allowed, they can't lobby on behalf of the district using state funds. Now they can use the local funds, the local funding, but they have to make sure that in that budget
doesn't get blurred.
Right, that there's no accounting gimmicks going on.
So the whole idea about there's special ed, I mean, that's a big topic that, I'm sure that's a huge, tall order to fill. It seems as though some of the kids fall through the cracks with that, and some of the parents are left behind. However, it's very taxing on budgets. Do they talk a little bit about that in their budget at all?
Yeah, you should be able to go to your budget and find those expenses. And I think what's going to shock a lot of people is how much is spent maybe on one child versus what you're spending per student in the district. It's not my area of specialty, but I have always advocated, and I always think it's a good idea, that the parents of special ed children, the teachers and the administrators, in my opinion, should really come up with a plan for your district.
Right.
That what we see is legislators, a lot of times a top-down approach saying this is what you need to do with special ed, this is what you need, and so you have schools following guidelines rather than coming up with their own solutions to reduce costs. I think they try to do their best, but you can see maybe $50,000, $100,000 being spent on one student for special education costs, whereas you might be spending $12,000, $13,000, $14,000 per student for the rest of the school. So, I think when you're looking for solutions, you bring in the stakeholders, you bring in the individuals that this directly impacts. And you said, how can we best spend this money?
Right.
But you just don't see that. You don't see the outreach to the community. You don't see them pulling in. You see parents having to fight. I have to fight for my child to get
Right.
these services, rather than it's just such a convoluted process.
And it shouldn't be that way, because it seems as though if sometimes some of these parents don't get the services they need because of attrition. They can just ignore you.
Yeah.
You apply over here, ignore you, apply over here, and that's not solving anything other than avoiding the inevitable.
Right.
And that doesn't serve the child. So, that should be addressed at some point. But it seems as though, it's not money allocated the proper way. Like you said, there should be some local input.
Right.
Rather than top-down cookie cutter,
Right.
because somebody's going to be left behind, and maybe it's not proportional towards an equitable amount.
Right.
So, any other areas that?
Well, I found in our budget this year is that they're having to implement new things based on USDA guidelines. So another federal encroachment into our schools is they've set these guidelines, and if the school doesn't spend the money on meeting these guidelines, you're going to lose funding for your school. So you're going to see those kind of entries in there that are basically federal guidelines on nutrition. Again, like in Bedford, we're going to buy a yogurt machine for the kids. I mean, some of these things might be worth spending money on, but it's not from the community.
Right. I saw a post today. I have to mention this.
Yeah.
It was from Representative Tamburello, and it was a picture of a note sent home to the parent saying, your two children had two things removed from their lunch and substituted with these two items for the nutritional value. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Yeah.
So it was as though somebody looked into their lunch bag. No, you can't have that. You can't have that.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to give you a pretzel, not a pretzel, a carrot or something. And I thought it was kind of funny, but I thought, what an invasion of your personal liberties.
It is, and what we're seeing is with these guidelines, a lot of the schools switched to these so-called healthy meals, and so all the kids were getting them and throwing them right into the trash can. So the problem is,
there's got to be a balance.
Again, yeah, because I think every parent wants a nutritious meal for their kids, but if you go too far, you're just gonna, the food's gonna end up in the trash. What have you really accomplished?
Right.
It feels good that we did something.
Right. I agree with the schools wanting to do that, and there's got to be that healthy balance where it's still the parent's choice.
Yes.
It has to be, and yet the children can be educated. Hey, this is the whole idea behind this food, the carrot, the kale, or whatever. This will help you with your acne or something. But to mandate it in such a way that they would reach in and take out, and that's kind of scary to me.
Yeah, and how about the kids maybe get involved and say, here's the fruits that we like, and here's the vegetables we like, but if you put these vegetables or these fruits on we're going to throw them in the trash.
Sure.
Those kind of things kind of make sense.
Local control.
Yeah, local control. And so, just go through the budget line by line. If you have any issues with the budget, let your school board members know, let the administrators know. Go to these meetings, go to school board meetings when they're proposing the budget. Look at your capital expenditures, what they want to, make improvements on, and then ask, like they had air conditioning in our budget, and I went up and I asked, I said, can you clarify, is this something that, are they replacing the air conditioning units? Are they putting them in? Because there's a big difference. I mean, we're not exactly living in Florida where it is absolutely needed. And so I want to make sure that that item is absolutely needed if I feel like that's a worthwhile item or not. So those are the kinds of things to look at. But your taxes are going to directly be impacted by this budget, without a doubt, by your budget every year. This is probably one of the most important issues that you can become involved in.
And that you have control over.
And it's once a year. Yes, and you have control. It's once a year. It's right, everybody's looking at their budget now. All the schools are looking at their budget. There's sessions coming up. Now is the time to just devote some time. It doesn't take a lot of time. Go look at the budget, figure it out, ask questions. You don't even have to go to some of these meetings, but then maybe attend one or two meetings. Maybe attend a school board meeting and say, I have an issue with some of these budget items. And my perspective as the education liaison is always academic excellence, literacy. How are we spending this money to really improve the literacy and the academic excellence in your schools? Clearly you need heat. That's going to be in your budget, and it has to be in your budget.
Right.
There are things that have to be in that budget, but look at some of these things that they're spending money on, and is this really something that's helping these kids academically? Is this actually needed? Because I think what I would ask them is this a need or a want? And if it's a want, you need to think about the people who live in your district that are on fixed incomes that cannot afford this.
And with the price of oil and the price of gas
Yes.
going up, the price of food going up,
Yes.
your health care costs are definitely going to be going up. That's
Those
right.
people need to be involved in this process.
Right.
Even if they don't have kids in school, if you are on a fixed income, get to these meetings, let these school board members know that you cannot afford this and that they have to be more prudent with this budget, more fiscally responsible when they look at this budget and put it together.
Now, is there a website for Cornerstone that people can go to?
Sure. It's nhcornerstone.org, and they can contact me directly. We are the leading organization in New Hampshire. There are other organizations, New Hampshire Families for Education, that is in the process of fighting Common Core because we don't feel that it's good enough for our schools, and this is based on some expert testimony individuals who sat on the validation committee that refused to sign off on the standards. So we're involved in that. I'm involved with other aspects. I have parents contacting me, teachers contacting me privately. I keep all their information private about problems that are going on in the school, and I would encourage anybody that if they have an issue with the budget, if they have an issue with anything that's going on in their school, Common Core related or not, feel free to contact me.
Final thought that I have for you. Apparently, Governor Hassan is going to sign a veto or encourage the Supreme Court to uphold something that money's not even actually going to, I'm not exactly sure.
The scholarship program.
That was already passed. It already passed the House. It's private money. Why did she pick this fight? Why not give the kids an opportunity?
This is a scholarship program,
right.
And I'll just briefly touch on it. It allows businesses to give to this private organization. They, in turn, distribute money to people who want to homeschool. They can apply for a scholarship. This is low-income families, by the way. Or private schools. Or private schools.
That can tailor it towards the child.
Right. So this was passed into law. The Supreme Court did strike down the fact that the money cannot go to a religious institution. So it is now going to the Supreme Court based on the religious argument. It's already a law. People are already receiving scholarships from this organization. It's just a matter of, should any of this money go to religious organizations? If you are a business and you donate to this charitable organization and they dole out the money, it never enters the state budget. It comes into the state. Never gets distributed to the state.
It stays private money.
Stays private money.
And it gives an option for the children to, whereas unless you're rich and you can afford to go to that Christian school or the private school.
Right. If you are rich, you have school choice in this country.
Right. The whole argument has been upside down for years. Well, if we allow vouchers, then only the rich kids will be going to school, and it's just the opposite.
Right.
And I thought that was actually, I was very cynical of how they played that argument, but it worked. It's really only the rich kids that or the kids that, or the parents that can make the sacrifice to send their kids to the private school if they don't feel that the public school meets their child's needs.
Right.
Not every child can learn a certain way.
Right.
It's not one big cookie cutter, and therefore there needs to be the flexibility. But Governor Hassan seems to not like that flexibility.
No, and it's really disturbing because there's been surveys done of parents. What do parents want? Parents want choice. They want choice in their schools. I'll be honest with you. When I do research, most parents want their kids in the public local school. They really do. I mean, they don't want to drive to different private schools. That's where they want them. I don't think we're going to see any mass exodus based on this scholarship program.
It's those kids that are left behind. It's the kids that learn differently. And I'm telling you, they're out there. And the people that are listening to this show know they're out there. They're either autistic or they learn visually or they have a different way of learning. And they need to have that option. Otherwise, they will be left behind. Yeah.
So essentially what I have concluded is that on this particular issue, she does not stand with the parents in New Hampshire and parents across the country. It is a shame because, the bottom line is let the parent decide. I think most parents are going to pick their local public school. Most like their teachers, most like their schools. They want them close. That's where they want them.
We love our school.
Exactly.
Our kids go to Broad Street. It's a great school. The teachers have been great. It's a nice community. It just seems as though that, but I do know some kids that go there that, well, they could probably use special ed. They could probably use a different program, but they're too poor.
Yes.
And that's a shame. So I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I hope to have you again sometime.
Sounds good.
All right. Marie Banfield with Cornerstone.
Thank you.
All right. And thank you for watching Speak Up. We hope that you're able to at least investigate what's going on in your local town, your local school budget, because really it is a big part of your taxes. And you can't just turn around and look at your property taxes and say, oops, they've just gone up 30%. This is how you can have a little control over it. So until next week, thanks for watching Speak Up. Thank you for watching this episode of Speak Up. We also want to thank our sponsor, Center for Redress of Grievances, LLC. You can reach them at www.centerforredress.com. If you want more information about Speak Up or want to be a guest, you have something to say, contact us at speakupnh@gmail.com. And thanks for watching. Until next week.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas. Dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.